so I have a big box of old photographs, really old, and old letters. And it was in the very, very back of my closet. So I had a minute yesterday before we start traveling again. So I said, okay, I'm going to pull the big box out and dump it on the floor and see what's in it. And it went all the way back to when my grandfather, 71 years ago, wrote a letter. And he had very choppy English because he was from Sicily and he didn't know English too well. Had written a letter to my mother the day I was born. And that was really, really, really sweet. And then it went all the way to when my daughter was born, and then pictures of that my sister had made into a collage when my mother had died some years ago of her parents and her parents' parents, and it was just a collage of all these old photographs. And so I was left with this whole floor full of letters from my daughter when she was in India, but the clincher is when I picked up this journal, and I didn't even remember that I ever journaled. People say, did you journal? I don't think so. But yet I had. And I read the first time my daughter went to India when she was 6½. I wrote after she left, and I was crying. Because how I wrote, how I felt, the loss of my only child on a plane to India, to God knows where, without faxes, without emails, without phones, without access to anything. And it just went from there to my grandfather's letter to my mother, and on and on. And so then I'm thinking, okay, I've got a whole room full of this, and then lots of letters from when I was a hippie that I'd written to my mother when I was searching for God. And they were ridiculous letters. They were great letters, though, really, really great. And it reminded me how sweet I was, and how I was just writing these angelic letters back in the 60s, searching for God in Hawaii, in Mexico, every place in Europe. I found them. No, I didn't. I'll go on. On and on. But then when I finished this whole afternoon, the first question was, how do I feel? And I didn't know how I felt, because I felt all over the place. I felt sad, I felt glad, I felt appreciative, I felt not good, I felt everything. And then I started evaluating the value of memories and the value of keeping memorable, what did I say? And what to do with all this stuff. My first thought was just trash it because it's already happened. And then the second, would my daughter like it? Would it have a legacy value? I still don't know. I put it all in a big bag. I got rid of a lot of the stuff though. I got rid of photographs of me I didn't like, so I just ripped it. But the point is, what brought for me the question was the value of what we retain. What we retain. And I think often what you retain is how your brain develops into its present state now. Don't you think so? So if one chooses, or is chosen by grace, to remember, what should we write? The good old days, to remember the fondness of your parents, the fondness of growing up, I think that has a value. As long as you don't live in it and wish it would return. I think that doesn't hold a value there. But if you look over your life, and you can then bow and just say thank you. I'm so grateful for even those hard times, those times I still don't understand. But if you're saving all of it, and what you end up with, life sucks, I don't think it has a value then, in the fact that where will that take you if it's a continuum of the negative. And I fell also upon a bunch of loose, kind of scattered on pieces of paper, notes I had found when I was in ladies camp with Yogi Bhajan in the 80s, and writing, just paraphrasing or sentences or sayings that he had said. And that was valuable. That was really valuable. I don't remember the times, the places, But he talked about stature. And I never really thought about stature. It just seems like it's an old-fashioned word. But how I explained it, it's the character of which you are, it's your stature. And if you have a character that people can believe, can trust, and can call upon, that's honest, that's a stature that will bring you into a fullness of life. An unstatured life would be one who you couldn't depend on that person. You didn't know ever where that person was at emotionally, honestly, what they said. You couldn't trust what they said, and you couldn't count. You couldn't count on them. And it's a good theme I'd like to use today, because to have stature, you have to have self-stature. You have to have self-appreciation, self-value. Because if you don't have that, you have nothing to give, like self-love. You know, and the Bible says, love thy neighbor as yourself, but if you hate yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to hate your neighbors. So it doesn't really work unless you have a self-love and a self-appreciation and a self-stature. And so as we go along today, I think it's a timely topic to what is your value to yourself. We sat this morning out in the garden, and I've been just thinking, what if I could, and I'm sure you've all done this, in the next 5 years, where do you see yourself? What would you like to have in your life? Who would you like to be? Where would you like to live? Go, occupation, family, everything. Instead of just bumbling through life. And I think you can say, well, I just leave it all up to God. Yes, but you are God. God and you and God are one. And I really, truly think that if you don't make some path in your third eye point, you won't deliver yourself. You'll wander your whole life, and you wonder your whole life. And I do believe as you get close to your last breath, you start coming into focus. Whether you're lying on a hospital bed on drugs or you're just approaching unknowingly, things come to you. Purpose comes to you. But rather than wait till way then, and then whoops, it can be too late, to right now. Because you have the power, and the power is within you. To just see who you are, instead of just babbling on and on, rambling on and on, or whatever that word is. I picked up 2 books yesterday, and I have a big stack. When my stack falls over, then I have to pick them up and look at them, what they are, because they're basically books. Where's the book? They're basically the books that people have given me to read. You've got to read this book. It's so great. Or an author sent me a book. So the first book was called The Journey by Barbara, anyone help me out? Barbara Brennan, of her story and her journey and where she takes people. It was a pretty amazing book. And her pain and her suffering in her life was unsurmountable. And now she travels the world and helps heal so many people by giving them this program called The Journey book. I can't wait to get home to continue the journey. But I think for some of us, we think people have arrived when we know them. But when you really go back to their beginnings, you see everybody has a journey. You all have a journey. You all have an important and a unique journey. But the question is, where is your journey going? Do you have any direction? Do you have a roadmap? Or are you just kind of bambling on and hoping for the best? Or maybe no direction at all, like a hamster. On a wheel. So contemplative day, I would say. Thank you all for coming. Let's bring our hands together. And take your thumbs in and your fingers.